Out there. This, as promised, is the most recent poem I've finished. It's called The Fairy Cup. Now, it's a very long poem, and it comes to 103 stanzas and a tercet, over 3,000 words. So I'm going to be reading it from my computer rather than memorizing it like I've been doing. So, where I got the idea for this one was from a medieval chronicle, which relates the following story. In the province of the Derry, Yorkshire, not far from my birthplace, a wonderful thing occurred, which I have known from my boyhood. There is a town a few miles distant from the eastern sea, near which are those celebrated waters commonly called Gipsy. A peasant of this town went once to see a friend who lived in the next town, and it was late at night when he was coming back, not very sober, when, lo! From the adjoining barrow, which I have often seen, and which is not much over a quarter of a mile from the town, he heard the voices of people singing, and, as it were, joyfully feasting. He wondered who they could be that were breaking in that place, by their merriment, the silence of the dead night, and he wished to examine into the matter more closely. Seeing a door open in the side of the barrow, he went up to it and looked in. And there he beheld a large and luminous house full of people, women as well as men, who were reclining as at a solemn banquet. One of the attendants, seeing him standing at the door, offered him a cup. He took it, but would not drink, and, pouring out the contents, kept the vessel. A great tumult arose at the banquet on account of his taking away the cup, and all the guests pursued him, but he escaped by the fleetness of the beast he rode, and got into the town with his booty. Finally, this vessel of unknown material, of unusual colour and of extraordinary form, was presented to Henry the Elder, King of the English, as a valuable gift, and was then given to the Queen's brother David, King of Scots, and was kept for several years in the treasury of Scotland. And a few years ago, as I have heard from good authority, it was given by William, King of Scots, to Henry II, who wished to see it. It was probably after William fell into Henry's hands after the Battle of Alnwick. Now, I took considerable liberties with the story. I was originally just going to dramatize it, but I have done another long poem which follows the general form of someone wanders into a fairy gathering, and I didn't want it to be too repetitive. I relocated the beginning of the story to the court of Henry I, and earlier in his reign than is quite probable. And that would be roughly, it's like Christmas of 1100 at the beginning of his reign. Or maybe it was 1101, I'll have to revisit my materials. It would be after an attempted invasion of England by Henry I's elder brother, Robert Curthose, Duke of Normandy. And it posits other political shenanigans which are vaguely plausible but not historical. This was probably the most difficult poem I've written, not so much because of the length, but because it kept changing forms as I wrote it. First, I relocated it to Henry I's court, but then I realized I was just going to have Henry telling the story of the peasant's story, and then I thought, well, that's just describe a royal court, then describe another royal court, and that would be rather boring. So I had Henry invent this whole political narrative about how the cup really got into the hands of that Yorkshire peasant. And I think it came out pretty well. You'll Have to see what you think. The Fairy Cup. In the tower by the Thames King Henry's court would bide, clever Henry, hard of hand, for some few seasons king. Bright revelry's noise the night did fill within the hall so grand, all garlanded and glittering with snow upon the land. Town and tower at peace did lay in light of Yuletide's brand. The crow of strife did not alight, but stayed and gave surcease, although Duke Robert plotted still in peerless Normandy. Knight and baron the bounty shared in shining company, the fearless and the fearsome, who with meat and mighty arms did reign o'er confessor's sad country. Resplendent sat royal Henry high above them all. Good Queen Maud most merrily beside him did abide, she whose blood wove back again the branch of Alfred's line. Out in the hall the courtiers had talk and tales of war and weddings, and with scorn for doubt, travels and fantastic things that to wines and ales ascribed had been. Singers sang unto them, ignored amidst the noise, and midst their mirth in princely state sat Robert of Belem, he who was of Ponthieu lord, and held the worth of Shrewsbury's earldom strong. King's rival of old, richest in the ranks of signory, did brazenly bide, although his final English chapter very soon might ended be. That lord most despised, covetous and cruel, had lately stood to fight for the right of Normandy's prince to rise and rule in England in his brother's stead. Despite invasion, bloodshed was stayed. Still Henry by his will would not forget. At high table the queen told wicked tales of saints ere sanctity had taken hold, flying freedom of one able to cast off false vocation's veil. Unto them then her brother came, David, son of Scotland's king, that goodly youth who grew in puissance and in prudence neath brother patron's wing. Your profane saints penitence need make, he said, and not to my taste are these. Yet those knights of York tell other things, and did see Lord Brother a question most marvellous. Ease my mind, pray, and answer unto me. Have you a cup taken from a fairy company? Henry looked with glinting eye, light of laugh and keen of thought, and wrought he rapidly pleasing notions of purposes to which he might his possession put. Good chamberlain, cried he, bring now to me that most rich and wondrous gift which was at Lenten tide given to my treasury. Haste he made, Henry's noble servant, soon returning with that gift given by Yorkshire's clergy, that token most prodigious and passing strange. Red it was, and of bright metal made, redder than the reddest gold, which brass nor copper could match, and of a sheen that laid nacre might resemble, glinting green more and winking blue. Wonderfully it was worked into a creature neither fish nor fowl. From its mouth the drinker drank, and there twinkled sapphire stones within its eyes. A scowl its beetle brow made fierce. All that saw spoke upon the sight, exclaiming their delight and curiosity. In their hearts woke wonder and speculation, shining light illumined their longing eyes. No common cup here lay, and none knew any mortal smith to make such a thing as this. They gave up naming the material of its making. Myth had spat it out. Such feathers and such scales, said Scotland's staring prince. They might be real. What hand could hew or cast it? And from the dales this came. How any man could come to steal or barter this curious cup, you must tell. Henry had his story primed, and told it in a humour which struck some distant knell. A story told to me had it won by wit a little, and more speed. Another would make it as much gift as theft. A barrow does in Yorkshire lie, in grassy lands and good, near Gipsy by the sea. In that barrow a potent prince did reign, I have been told, a prince of realms of faery. Full wise was he, glib and guilesome, and exceeding bold. One of those fey lords o'er whom he reigned, cause had given him for ire and strain, even one who had gained his favour. Unto that lord as a token he had given graciously a wondrous working, come new made from his finest smith, a certain cup, which in grace was offered and accepted, and greater grace, for it was not offered up for common liking. Favour was preferred in forgiveness for those days in which that lord had obstinately opposed his will. Long past days it seemed, yet there would be that temptation which would draw sin from him still. This right regal prince had a rival of old, for in faery as in Christendom no prince's tale shall without a foe be told. And this enemy, as he well did know, courted all his courtiers with largesse and with comely courtesy. This vassal in his pride was drawn into the wilderness of treachery, and with false and facile ways he wove dealings with his master's enemy. From his very throne the prince they would unseat. Yet mendacious manners did not hide from the artful eye, nor evince delusion in that lord most dread and wise. He regarded this undertaking, and deemed that with sleight of hand he might surprise them in their treachery, all they'd planned revealing. The fairy folk, as all know, despise that mortal man should grasp and keep any object of their working. 'Tis woe on any who takes from them, for they leap to chase and catch and punish any thief hopeful of their goods obtaining. The great and small alike would thus take flight, relief nor quarter sparing. One solemn Sunday late, proof unto the prince was given that his foes meant by means of a ruse to make use of this chink of fairy nature, all his forces to draw, and by ambush reduce them, and of his hall lay hold. This patient prince unrelenting made ready. And now, leaving him to his artful arrangement, and to a tale that's more familiar, allow me to return. There was a peasant homeward riding, home to Gipsy by the sea. Happily hied he through the evening onward, all flushed with ale and merry company. Beyond the barrow did his good friends dwell, and by it passed he in the fading day. As along the trail he rode, he heard well the sounds of a royal court at play. What such court could bide in the barrow, wondered he, and his curiosity carried him unto the mound, where aglow he found a round door shining radiantly. Within the door he set his foot, full of wonder and of ale, and there beheld such sights, dear brother, such awesome sights as are above what even my mortal court entails. Lights were lit upon their crowns as stars on sainted brows. No mortal hands could play, nor voices sing the songs of fairy mounds. Reclined they for a solemn feast. About them choicest meat and drink was spread with fruits very fine, and at high table sat the shining shapes of the prince and his consort most divine. Attendants wove about with sweetest grapes on platters shining, and they with decanters tall were filling up the cups of fairies dining. Some bore drink to newcomers their seats finding, and one stands and tarries to see such finery as clad them there. One of these fairy servants brought unto that mortal man a cup, wonderful and rare, and in his hand it was laid. This man knew the rule that mortals must obey. Never eat of fairy food, nor drink their draughts at all, lest their land should bind thee ever, and their nature thus enthrall. Observe, that peasant farmer was heard to tell others of this rule, and fairy lords have many ears to make of man a tool. The colours shining he looked upon, and the company, and on his heart the cup did catch, did hold him in its thrall. "Too rich for me," said he, of the glittering of the wine, and full bold he tipped it out again, and stepped quickly out the door. The cup within his garb he thrust, and mounted on his mare. To flight he took with heel and voice, and rapidly to Gipsy sped away. He was out of sight when rumour ran the barrow all around. A mortal came and stole the cup of our good working. Catch him now! With ringing sound the fairies leapt, and to their horses poured. That unrighteous lord did dream victory then, thinking of his master's men riding into ambush, and himself with treachery most foul the battle's course deciding. More than that would be done by his vassals bold. A band he'd leave behind within the barrow, and they, for the fortress might yet hold, would those within betray, that the foe might harrow all. Unto his horse he rose to go, but the prince's men about him closed. His heart dropped low, but he smiling said, "How now, friends? The prince our lord does go. Why have you stopped me, when after him I'd follow?" Out from the shadows stepped the prince, saying, "Where think you I have gone? Unto the hunt, or else some brave battle where I'd be overcome?" "You shrink, my lord. Have you some cause for fear?" That lord replying said, "Nay, master mine, why speak you in this way? And why stand you still? What cord does bind you here, when you might yet pursue that brazen mortal who rose to rob your very hall? For even any common cup to be taken is cause for sorrow sore." The prince with glinting eye soon spoke up again. "Common cup, my lord? What common cup is this? The one that by your setting sits?" The lord turned back to look with sudden sinking heart. By his couch a cup was sitting, carved of wood, simply cut in sylvan style, and with leaves of ash entwined. In air it took of portent dark, a dreadful taste of guile. He said, his shaking hands concealing, "A fair cup was sitting there, my own fair chalice that you yourself had given unto me. What meaneth this, my prince? What jest or malice now ensues? What mischief wakes suddenly to disturb our company?" Grim was his grin, and most unmerry that wrathful prince in might. His gaudy lord's guise grew brittle then and thin, and all about stood silent to see such a sight. "Is that not the cup you took, the cup you laid in hand of an attendant bribed to give it unto mortal man? Deny you at your peril, your recourses now are few. Think you that I do not know all that you would do? If you expect that to an ambush will all my forces fall, I tell you true. In ambush is my rival ambushed, and crush him yet we shall. Your men within my hall positioned have been taken and laid low. Never shall you take and give my all unto the foe. Here I'll stand, and soon will show him the most egregious error of his ways. Now, come, my lord, whilst we wait, and tell me how you'll justify the way the land now lays." The lord bent not his head when he made his plea. "I did wonder, my prince, where went certain of your liegemen. Very well, if your victory should follow as you say, in this fashion shall you rise and reign thereafter. Yet injury might still obtain for a prince not meant to rise so high. For though I have straitly served you now these 7 years, and had served no few years in other spirit prior, I had well observed the time when you were hardly greater than was I. In that time, master mine, recall that you had burned me by your word, and ken how you had slighted me indeed. But all is past, though it doth leave this truth behind. Full feeble are your rights to the throne on which you sit, and your rival does not find that in these sorry matters he has shown any error that is his. How call you now the man who returneth rightful property? Now, poor I am not. No few are my friends in this your dire and doubtful court. Your victory is not sure, nor is your hold on liegeman's loyalty. Come, and grant me kindness, hard-pressed prince, and I your friend again will prove. If from favour I am sent, trouble then may follow on my wings. He paused, this baron most brazen, and scarcely did he tremble. He spoke then suddenly, saying, What did become of that cup which to me was given? The prince gazed on him. In stillness bided he. When he spoke, he did speak most wonderingly. You speaketh so to me, sightless of your state, fearsome and brazen is your boast. Injury you ascribe, and talk of service. 7 years may seem a tiresome term to mortal men, but a mere season it is to you and I. Yet a woeful worm you have made to sate itself upon your world roots. Into my favour with many words and promises you wove yourself, and curled, if you could, into my confidence, inwards even to my heart. Injured you have I. A foul friend indeed you have proved, heedless and heartless, and a vile vassal too. At my back you with your knife were ready, contemptuous of all forgiveness I'd extended unto you. You begged it in blasphemy for memory of our first meeting, and some few things that came after. Forgive lay not in store for such friendship as we might know more. Thus you requested. Thus, alas, I gave. Now your mouth makes itself an abscess, spewing pus of a poison that you, not I, shall suffer for. Now your concerns I shall confront, my lord. As for right of rule, my rival's claim, as all know, appeals to no law of this land. Restored he claims he fain would be, and in great gall claimeth he, for in this seat never has he sat, nor done aught but presume. He is besides a bad master and a fool. As for your own matters, these are clearer still than his, and indeed no question I'll let upon them lay. You speak of trouble that might come if I deal harshly with you. You should rather say that you connive to make my lords defy me, rout me, make from me a mockery of sovereignty, if this your first scheme did not succeed. Alas! With certainty these efforts are not rewarded. My lords would seem not to like you so well. Neither do they love so much your feeble dream of some strange lordly governance that they'd with scorn repay my proffered kindness, and evermore estrange themselves from me for sake of what they might, by gambling, gain. Ah! To think what sort of subject my rival would have found you, such a sight I almost wish that I could see. An aspect most unnatural does your unseemly ambition take. Greed for power, as for silver, you were afforded as abundantly as some were granted generosity. You asked my name for you and for your kind. Traitor, my lord, traitor in ages old and new. And in my hand I hold you, mind and body, and all my humours growing cold. I shall deal with you before the fight, before the battle comes. No rescue shall redeem you then, this I know, and tell you more. You shall be 7 years within the stream, an eel, eliding all immortal care. You shall be 7 years a tongue to Gipsy village bell, and for all the hours and each burying that is sung, your head shall strike the knell. You shall then be 7 years a mortal man that time does hold in thrall. Lead no mortal men do ken what fairy folk have kept by any act or rhyme, or return ye never unto fairy kind. To my court return ye never, lest the death ye die. Forfeit all ye hold of me, and bind your hopes beside, or else forfeit breath, and in Hades there reside. As for that comely chalice that to thee I had once granted as a gift, The prince paused a moment more, gazing on the furious, wild-eyed indignance of one who was no more a lord. As largesse I gave it unto that mortal man who came to visit us today. This I profess, fairy folk shall never see it more. Your shame is wretched. Bow your head, and silent stand, that grace may still attend. Take him now away. And they took him, the prince's men, by his command, while their master went to war. That very hour it was begun, the punishment the prince had spoke. As for the prince's rival, he was dealt, 'tis said, a dolorous and a dreadful blow. Revince my word one might, for I had it from one who dwelt not so very near, but report was made that strange fires marked the fight, and made peasant folk to fear. That noble traitor, richly repaid, has not since set foot in fair and pleasant fairy, but dwelt instead in fast grey waters fished by men. Fish me up an eel, I think, and you may find him once again. In matters more mundane, the party did quickly shrink that pursued the peasant and the cup, as you might imagine, and he came safely home to Gipsy by the sea, there to sup and to be feted, there his tales to tell, and surely with such witness as the cup he was believed. King Henry turned the cup within his hand, tracing mane and scale and parts all filigreed. He looked long, then set it down and let it stand before the Scottish prince's wondering eyes. David then reached out to take it, with trembling touch so carefully. Henry sat back smiling and waited. He looked upon his brother and his queen so laughingly, and from his family did not turn. Even then the hall sat still and silent, musicians muted, ladies in spinning thought, and all the lords with straining ears fervent that they his every word should hear. That lord of Belem in bilious rage looked from side to side, seeking eyes of allies with sword professed to aid him. None looked back, but some looked exceeding ill at ease. Unto the king Robert looked, but no sign did Henry betray of intent, or of thought or care that anything in his tale might bear on matters of the day. Henry then did speak again unto David, Scotland's prince. This chalice came to us in this way, from a prince as it was fated, unto a lord, and then a peasant man. Thus did it rise, from a peasant to his lord, and from his lord unto the king of all the land. But for all its wonder, afford it I might well to give to you for all of time the thing that does enthrall your eye. Take it and be glad, for it is yours. Bright was David's face when he raised it, filled with high spirits and with glee. It shall be my delight, cried he. My thanks I give, and my gratitude I repeat resoundingly, for the thing is most wonderful for its own sake, and then a plenitude of marvels in the story that you tell. Full splendid is that tale, and if you sang it with the harp, no Trouvere would tell it better. Although it might have said more about the battles. With a humorous eye, Henry replied, You should know, young brother mine, that battles are fought first in the mind, that all the learning in ways of war availeth not unto the sovereign who within his house cannot keep order. Learn from that fairy prince, David, and ever keep about you a weather eye, a keen ear, and loyal men within your sphere. The end. There's my rendition of a fairly obscure episode in the history of fairy lore. In this story, I posit a probably quite ahistorical, fizzled attempt by Robert of Belem to incite a baronial revolt against Henry I in what would have been the first year of his reign. over 100 years before it actually happened under King John. There were plenty of troubles involving strong barons during the Norman period, so I suppose it isn't completely and totally impossible. Henry uses this story to notify Robert that he's in trouble, I suppose. And it also posits some interpersonal convolutions between Henry and Robert, which are also quite invented, though maybe Henry's just embroidering. Anyway, if you liked that poem, please like, share, comment, and subscribe.